Since 2016, I've been shooting on Lumix cameras and still use them to this day for my video production company. But I've had many opportunities to shoot on various different brands from Sony, Blackmagic, Canon, and even Red. But time and time again, I keep coming back to Lumix cameras and keep recommending them to my filmmaking friends and community like you guys. Now, from the various different new features they keep adding, the underdog power plays, and the hopeful future that Lumix is offering, and in this video, I'll be deep diving into the 10 reasons why I personally recommend Lumix cameras over the other brands. If you don't know me, I'm Matthew Dangyou. I run a video production company called 4x3 Films here in San Diego. I do have a working relationship with Lumix and I am affiliated with them and I've done various projects with them. However, I'm not tied down to their cameras. I do own a Blackmagic Pixel 6K and I've used various other brands and systems in my own workflow. But with all of that said, I am technically an official Lumix curator and different things like that. So there is definitely some bias here, but I think it's good bias. So let's dive into reason number 1, which is OpenGate. Now, if you don't know what OpenGate is just referring to being full sensor recording, being able to record all the width and all the height in your sensor. Now, while other brands are finally start implementing this, like Canon with their new C70, Lumix has been doing this for a long time and still are the only cameras right now on the market with a full frame OpenGate recording sensor with IBIS. Now, the big advantage of OpenGate, apart from being able to use it for anamorphic shooting, is for delivering in multiple formats. If you need to deliver in a 16:9 or a 9:16, using the entire sensor width and height, you can deliver in multiple formats and don't have to reframe constantly or record one clip horizontal and one clip vertical. OpenGate, if you haven't used it, it's really essential. Once you use it, you're like, this is a time saver. Which moves on to my second reason, which is IBIS or in-body image stabilization. While Lumix finally just kind of got the grasp of having really good autofocus with the phase detect autofocus from the S5 II and so on, what Lumix has been known for a long time is their in-body image stabilization or IBIS, for having some of the best IBIS on the market. Not only that, they have added a ton of new electronic stabilization, which takes it to a whole nother level. With their new cameras, you do have cropless stabilization, then there is also standard high electronic stabilization. Cropless is really cool because it's using no cropping whatsoever to the image and you are getting electronic stabilization on top of the IBIS as well, which just makes it basically extremely smooth. And then if you want to use high on the flip side, you can end up getting gimbal-like footage without needing to even have a gimbal. The last form of stabilization they all have as well is called Boost IS or Boost Image Stabilization, which basically if you're on a telephoto lens, you click on Boost IS, it's basically going to make your camera look like it's on a tripod. It's not really used for movement whatsoever, but if you need a locked off shot and you have a tight lens and you don't have a monopod or a tripod, this really comes in handy. Number 3 is budget. Now, while cameras like Blackmagic and Nikon are pushing the boundaries of what the price point is and making it a little bit more competitive in the market, Lumix has been known to do this for a long time, offering cameras at a reasonable price point with an immense amount of features. Think the S5 II or the S5 IIX when those cameras first got announced. They still kind of continue to do this on and on with the Lumix S1 Mark II, offering an immense amount of features in that camera at a pretty reasonable price point when you are comparing it to other different camera brands. And then on top of that, if you want to get into the used market, you can get some pretty crazy deals on Lumix cameras just because they are a smaller brand. So all in all, they are known for being more budget cameras, but they're not holding back or not gatekeeping any features like Sony and Canon. Reason number 4 is the L-Mount Alliance. If you haven't heard what the L-Mount Alliance is, it's basically an alliance with Leica, Lumix, Sigma, DJI, Blackmagic, Samyang, and a couple other Viltrox now, and a couple other camera brands and lens companies to have one entire system that can be utilized across the entire board, which is really nice. Sony, for example, has something called the Venice effect, where it starts with the Venice and it trickles down to the system. So if you want to get a Sony ZV-10, you can figure out your entire workflow path or your upgrade path all the way to a Venice. Meanwhile, with L-mount cameras or Lumix cameras, you can kind of choose your own journey. You might want to start with the Lumix camera and then transition to the Pixis 12K or 6K, or go to the DJI Ronin 4D. So it allows you kind of to be a little bit more flexible with your bodies, but have a consistent set of L-mount lenses and glass in your kit, and being able to switch bodies without having to switch all of your lenses, sell all of your lenses, and keep your lenses, being able to just change bodies out as you're going on throughout your filmmaking career. Reason number 5 kind of relates, which is partnerships. Lumix has been known to have some of the best partnerships for a long time and tend to end up getting them first before any other brands. This is a great example when B-RAW externally was a thing on Lumix cameras first before any other camera brand, then also being able to have Frame.io camera to cloud directly internal camera, Apple ProRes RAW, and now even Arilog C3 since the Lumix GH7, which is a pretty cool thing to say since this is currently the only camera that has a license from ARRI themselves, the cinematography Hollywood camera, to have their log profile in their camera. So it only shows some hopes and signs that maybe we'll eventually get some type of Leica log or something like that inside the camera in the future, but that's just a hope and potential. Hey guys, sorry for the quick interruption. If you guys are interested in seeing more content similar to this and learning how to master your own Lumix camera, well, you should definitely consider subscribing. Anyways, I'll let you get back to the video. Number 6 is the community that is around Lumix cameras. There's a lot of great creators here on the platform on YouTube, but there's also a ton more great creators showing off the work using their Lumix cameras day in and day out. There's different groups from Reddit, Facebook, and my personal favorite, the Lumix Creators Club, or the Lumix Discord, which is the official Discord that I run for Lumix themselves. It's bunch of people are over there sharing their work. We're doing contests. So if you guys are interested in joining the Lumix Creators Discord, well, there will be a link in the description. Reason number 7 is cameras you can grow into. What I mean by this is you might start off getting a camera and you don't necessarily need to be shooting in ProRes RAW or internal ProRes, or you don't need to be doing external RAW and B-RAW, or you don't need the camera to cloud functionality or proxy recordings or things like that. But maybe one day down the road, you do want these features. It's nice to have a camera system that allows you to kind of grow into the system and have features already there and relatively available to you, and not have to be like, oh, now I need to buy a more expensive camera. The features are already there and you're just growing into the camera itself. Number 8 is reliable firmware updates. A little bit ironic since another Sony update came out and a lot more Sony cameras are starting to brick and requiring Sony users to either return their cameras, get them fixed, get them repaired, or have to buy a completely new camera altogether. Well, that's not as much of a stressor, or not really a stressor at all, since Lumix cameras have been known to have really solid firmware updates for a long time. On the original S5 II, if you got it at launch, was one completely different camera. You didn't have camera to cloud, you didn't have real-time LUT, you didn't have Lumix Lab app being able to have 40 different LUTs and looks baked into your camera. You didn't have hybrid zoom for photo or video when that camera first launched. And then a year and a half later, you get these firmware updates for free too, that makes it feel like a brand new camera. This is really massive because since Lumix is not a massive camera company, they're working more on their firmware updates, trying to push their cameras to the limit and to the max potential that they can do physically inside the software and the hardware. So they're trying to push the software as much as possible. This is great because that means if you bought the S5 II 2 years ago and then 2 years later there was a firmware update that made it feel brand new, it's like getting a brand new camera instead of the S5 Mark III coming out and having to buy a whole new camera 2 years later. It's kind of, again, this goes into the grow into the cameras, but it's also brand new features that keep coming with these cameras, and it's really cool to see what Lumix is developing and trying to push the boundaries of what they can physically do with every single camera. Number 9 in correlation to software is app technology. With the new 2 apps from Lumix being the Lumix Lab app and the Lumix Flow, granted I haven't really used the Lumix Flow that much so I can't speak a ton of it, but the Lumix Lab app has been one of my favorite apps to use when doing photos, especially for fun or for friends or for just a trip. It's kind of hit a new spark for photos for me because I can burn in a look and LUT into my photo, then basically airdrop it to my phone and then send it to all my friends when we were going on a trip. And they could have these really high quality photos from a national park that I took and didn't need to edit whatsoever because I had a burned in look that I created, not on the app, but you can create looks on the app, or you can download creators LUTs on the app. Mine are also on there if you want to test a few of mine out right there. But if you're interested in my entire film LUT pack, there is a link to the description for that as well. But it's just cool to see Lumix focus on software, especially as this next generation of filmmakers are doing less of this for editing and more of this on their phones editing. It's cool to see them focus kind of on that next generation of filmmakers and kind of work with them with what they are using and being able to have some type of function to use their cameras with the phone and being able to have your footage go from your camera to your phone, I think is just super cool. Reason number 10 is because Lumix is a small camera brand. Does Lumix currently have a new updated cinema camera yet? No, not at least by the time I'm recording this video, they don't. However, what is nice about that fact is because Lumix is a smaller brand, every single camera that they're releasing is not gatekeeping any cameras right now. They're pushing every single camera to the fullest potential, giving as much as each camera can get. So it's not really saying, oh, we're gonna hold off this feature because we have this other camera out. Maybe one day they'll eventually be there, but currently right now, they're pushing every single feature to the fullest potential with every single camera, which is really special. And on top of that, because they're a smaller camera brand, you have things like the Lumix Live, you have the Discord, the Facebook group, which gives opportunities for people, for filmmakers in the community, in the Lumix ecosystem, to request features in hopes for things to be in the future camera brand. One good example of this that I personally mentioned and brought up during a talk with the engineers before in the past was multiple frame markers, which I bet other people like you guys have mentioned multiple frame markers before, but it just felt kind of cool to myself that I was like, I said I want multiple frame markers. I talked to engineers. I've also talked to engineers how something could be, how it could be fully developed and used. And then couple years or a year or so later, I'm seeing multiple frame markers in the camera. So it's a cool thing to have happen that you can have actual say on what future products have inside it because they're a smaller brand and company at the current moment. So wrapping it up with my final thoughts. Ultimately, any camera that you get today, that's coming out today, is gonna be super, super good. It's gonna be more than enough, and it's gonna be more than you really need. Ultimately, what it comes down to is your stories and how you're telling them, how you're lighting them, how the audio is, and different things like that with the editing. But when you're looking into camera brands, what I personally recommend when people are deciding which camera brand to go at is look at the features that you specifically want or need for your own workflow. For myself, that's open gate, having been able to have some type of open gate in 60 frames a second and different things like that, especially with the IBIS. And then secondly, I also like kind of being behind a brand for what they stand for and kind of the people behind the brand and who they are, personally speaking. Because I do have some relationships with Lumix themselves and know the people behind the brand, it kind of makes me personally feel a little bit more connected to Lumix as a whole, just because I know who's working at the company. Most people look at Lumix as just logo and brand, but there is people behind the brand that's making these cameras special and trying to make them as best as they possibly can at the fullest potential. Anyways, love to hear your guys' thoughts, what you guys think about Lumix cameras and what you guys love about them. If you are interested in learning how to get the best autofocus settings out of your Lumix camera, well, check out that video right there. YouTube recommends you might like this video right here. Until next one, guys, peace.